Joe Biden's America is sliding dangerously close to war as Ukraine's stiff resistance to Russia's invasion continues. Now, a small group of Republicans have taken a stance to keep the U.S. out of Putin's crossfire.
Well, 8 Republicans voted against legislation in a vote last Thursday to end normal trade relations with Russia, making it clear they want no U.S. intervention there. Out of the 8 who voted no is Florida Congressman Matt Gaetz. He shared his concerns on the Russian sanctions bill, tweeting this: "I reckon it's easier to not read the bills and just vote for the Russia bad position, as a measure was slipping and giving Biden broad authority to sanction anyone, whether they're connected to Russia or not."
The Florida Congressman joins us now. Congressman, thanks for being with us tonight.
So much for having me.
Hey, I wish that we had more politicians who are willing to come on TV and answer for their votes. So we really appreciate you being here. I know that you, as I mentioned, you are one of 8 Republicans who voted against revoking normal trade relations with Russia. You had 424 of your colleagues who voted in favor. Why do you feel like this was the right call?
Well, in typical Nancy Pelosi fashion, we only got the bill hours before the vote. And in typical Nancy Pelosi fashion, the bill actually did different things than the title would lead us to believe. On pages 19, 20, and 21 of the legislation, it gave broad powers to Joe Biden to sanction any person inside or outside of Russia if he deemed that they violated norms of human rights. Now, today, that may mean supporting the invasion into Ukraine, which we all opposed. But tomorrow, that may mean if another country wasn't willing to let biological men compete in women's swimming, maybe they could be sanctioned. So I found it to be a really reprehensible delegation of congressional authority to the executive. And beyond that, I don't really know that the sanctions would play out the way the architects would hope. Right now, we see more and more Chinese investment funds buying up distressed Russian assets. I think there are huge geopolitical consequences to driving Asia's largest producer of energy into the arms of Asia's largest consumer of energy. That could create a Sino-Russian alliance that would pose a far greater threat to America than even the terrible carnage that we hope ends in Ukraine.
Well, you mentioned China, and sorry, I just want to ask you really quickly, because the Biden administration has mentioned severe consequences if China gets involved and assists Russia in military action. What should those consequences be? Because we haven't really heard any specifics.
Well, I believe that China has already made the decision to support Russia in this endeavor, economically, militarily, and otherwise. And it's important that the Biden administration be very clear about the decisions they know the Chinese have already made in that regard. I think that we've got to stay tough with China, but we also have to understand that, we need the help of Russia and China to prevent Iran from obtaining a nuclear weapon. So this is really three-dimensional chess. And if this conflict has taught us anything, it's the importance of nuclear deterrence. I mean, we are not able to push back against Russia to the same extent that we would push back against a non-nuclear power. And so I would suggest that ensuring that we stop Iran from getting a nuclear weapon, that we not enter a nuclear deal with them, would be really important so that we don't face this type of a dynamic going forward in the Middle East.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. So if not sanctions, then what is the solve here?
I think that the Ukrainians have to negotiate their own peace. I think that the Biden administration was sort of fumbling and bumbling around these MiGs that we could have facilitated from Poland into Ukraine. I would have supported that because it would have been the Ukrainians establishing their own defense. I support our military investment in some of the Eastern Bloc that hopefully deters further Russian aggression. But we really don't want to poke the bear here. We really don't want to end up in a nuclear conflict with Russia. We want to make sure that this is resolved as quickly as possible. And it's my hope that this upcoming round of talks will have more success for the Ukrainians, because more and more they are prevailing. Russian tanks are taking up defensive positions outside of Kyiv. There is a very enthusiastic counter-assault that is happening right now. And in the south, Russia thought they would already control all of the Black Sea. They don't. That's limiting that push.
So, Congressman, I got to ask you, a few weeks ago at CPAC, you made a pretty bold statement. You said that your constituents fear Dr. Fauci more than they fear Vladimir Putin. I mean, as this war progresses in Ukraine, would you still say that Dr. Fauci is more feared in the Sunshine State than Putin?
I think that in my state, when folks are waking up, they're worried about their jobs, their gas prices, their careers, the opportunity to send their kids to schools that Dr. Fauci wants to close, that our Governor Ron DeSantis wants to keep open. And so, yeah, I do think that the lockdowns and the deprivations of liberty in America ought to be more at the forefront of the minds of the Congress than they have been. And, you know, I'm no fan of Vladimir Putin. This is an invasion that was unprovoked, that was entirely of Putin's choosing, but I don't think the response ought to be putting Americans in a worse position. Like, why should my constituents have to pay $8 a gallon for gas so that we buy it from Venezuela or Iran rather than Russia? And then what? So politicians can claim some great moral win? That's crazy. Even the general that leads the Southern Command said that if we swap Venezuelan oil for Russian oil, Venezuela will actually use the money to go buy Russian arms. So Russia will get the cash anyway, and Maduro will get arms in exchange for laundering petrodollars into Russia. That's crazy. There's a lot of natural resources we need in the world, and many of those lie underneath despots and dictators that we wish we didn't have to deal with, but unfortunately in some cases we do.
Right. And if Biden would only rely on American, then we wouldn't probably be in this position. Congressman Matt Gaetz, great to see you tonight. Thanks for being with us.
Oh, thank you both.